Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Adam Cleary.
Hey,
Mr. Adam Cleary. Now, I've drafted you in because you know all sorts of worldly things, and I don't. So, this is a big old story, comes from Al Jazeera, about a Saudi Arabian prince called Mohammed bin Salman, who's invested $3.3 billion into Activision, Take-Two, and EA. And as soon as I started reading about this, it reminded me of the Saudi acquisitions, or at least the Saudi involvement in WWE, which is why I came running to you. And so, this also was written up by Kotaku. They said that this venture gives the prince millions of shares, but a relatively small fraction of ownership. So, Mr. Business Cleary, what's going on?
Right. So this is a story that it doesn't matter what you're into, whether it's wrestling or football or gaming, probably sooner or later, if there's anything you like in the entertainment sphere, it's probably going to get in there eventually, such as the grand ambitions and the scale of the money they have to play with here. But basically this all kind of relates to this Saudi Arabian project called Vision 2030, which is this enormous modernization PR campaign that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is trying to do to make them a global player on the world stage by basically just not infiltrating the West, but making them a prominent sort of part of the conversation everywhere. And you can sort of go back to the WWE thing. This is kind of where it first really got a lot of traction. They've done sort of small things, like they started getting Nike to make their national team's football kit and stuff, but it really sort of kicked off with WWE because it's where they got accused of sports washing. And if you don't know what that is, basically the principle of just using positive PR campaigns to mask not pleasant things going on behind the scenes. And WWE were the first sort of company in the West to sort of get accused of being sort of a part of all of this. The very short version of this is that Saudi Arabia have, for decades and decades and decades now, been... what's the delicate way to put this? Seen as one of the less progressive states in that part of the world, let's say. They were not modernising their laws or their human rights or just sort of the way the rest of the world was changing. They were not really keeping up with that, let's say. And basically when this guy came into power, he decided he was going to set about modernising the country by introducing certain rights for certain groups of people. Like women can drive in Saudi Arabia.
I did see that,
That sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but that's genuinely what it was like. Like, women needed a man's permission to do pretty much anything, to get a passport, to get certain medical treatments, to drive a car, for example. But now, as part of the thing, they're bringing in, they can do that now. And that's the sort of internal politics is one side of it. But what they're trying to do, where it concerns this story, is basically get a foothold in major Western businesses to sort of get Saudi Arabia as a far more recognised player on the world stage. So they started having WWE host major events in their country, and one of the events happened to coincide with the Jamal Khashoggi case, which was where it was alleged that certain members of the Saudi Arabian royal family had ordered the death of this journalist because he was quite critical of the regime. Now that's still all ongoing, and it's they came out and said, "Oh, we're shocked that our name's been brought." Well, we will. These individuals acting without our permission, will have them punished and whatnot. And everyone was like, So WWE got a lot of flack for basically doing an event saying, look at this wonderful progressive country that we're doing the show and you should all check out Saudi Arabia. They're the best. While literally the blood of an actual journalist is staining the ring mat.
Brilliant.
That night. So wherever this goes, there's always a lot of controversy with it. They've tried to buy a Premier League football team, Newcastle United, etc., etc., which, again, people are concerned about because they think that this money is going to be used to effectively, again, sports wash a lot of the problems with the country, and even with the positive changes they're making. Like women can drive, for example, but the people who campaigned for that for years and years are still in prison. So it's a lot of it feels quite superficial, which is where a lot of the controversy and a lot of the criticism comes from. But then there's the other side of it. People want their football teams to be invested in. People want their games companies to be able to make more games and to have more spending power to do certain things. So it divides people right down the middle, all of this. Like, fans of these studios may not want this kind of money involved, but then again, fans of these studios may want them to have more money to go make better games. So it kind of depends where you fall down on this. I did say that would be the short version. I'm sorry about that. It's quite a long-winded version of it.
This is what I need. Because like the thing that it reminded me of is all the Tencent acquisitions, which is a big conglomerate coming out of China, and they helped greenlight some stuff. Like, they invested in Platinum, they invested in Remedy, but they're also throwing their money around in Ubisoft and Activision as well. And in this case, the Saudi Arabian prince thing, he says that he has this whole movement thing called MISC, which is to foster, empower, and create a healthy environment for young creative talent, which is very nice. And but it's that whole thing, like you said, of the way that it rolled out in the WWE, where they were suddenly trying to sort of like help create a certain image for like the Saudi side of things. And I guess, how do you see it playing out in the gaming sphere? Because the Kotaku report said that he has a very small fraction of ownership, but it's like, will it be glaringly obvious if some sort of game comes out where it's like, this has been a little bit messaged, a little bit massaged in a certain way?
It is definitely different to the WWE thing, because in the case of that, it was literally the Saudi General Sports Authority working as part of the PIF investment, basically getting them in to specifically do good PR for them. Come and do these events here as a showcase for the country. Now, I doubt with the level of control they're getting in these game studios, they're going to say, do games that make Saudi Arabia look good. I don't think they're going to have that level of control in it, but at the same time, they're not putting the money in this for no reason. Like, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that they start doing certain games do levels in Saudi Arabia, or there's little references to it, or things like that. They are going to be getting something for their money in all of this, and it's whether or not people who buy these games are comfortable with knowing that this is being done deliberately to present a massaged, a very palatable view of this country when there are still inherently huge problems within there. Like, they haven't changed a lot of their views and their approaches to the LGBT community, for example. People are still imprisoned, deported, fined, and a lot worse in those countries for things like that. So it depends whether or not you kind of sort of look at this as well. The money's got to come from somewhere. It's not like if you try and find any national government to invest in a video games industry, you will find something in that government somewhere which is unpalatable. So there is always that argument, but at the same time, are those governments specifically investing in it to try and present a more palatable view of themselves? So it's a complete moral maze, and everybody tends to come down somewhere different on the spectrum of all of this. If it leads to better games while they are genuinely improving the country, then yes, there are a lot of positives to take from it. If it is to present, if it's effectively to cover up criticisms of the country, then a lot of people will find
because it kind of feels, it feels like on the Saudi side they can just be like, well, we're endorsed by EA, Activision, all these major
that's literally
countries.
the idea. Like, look, people in the West, they want Saudi Arabia to be seen differently to regular people in the Americas and in Europe, which will lead, they think will lead to more investment in the country, better tourism, just making them feel a bigger power on the world stage, which is ultimately what they want to do. And at the same time, people will say that a lot of the changes they're making in the country are superficial, but they are making them. So it's not like I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I really, really criticise WWE's involvement in the country, but at the same time, WWE did manage to get the first ever women's wrestling match in Saudi Arabia, which is small potatoes to us here. That seems ridiculous, but still, that wouldn't have happened without their involvement. So I think for normal people in Saudi Arabia, for the general population there, this is changing things, even if it's slightly, and it is a good thing to an extent, but
well,
at the same time, it's still whitewashing of political stuff. So
the thing that I've not looked into too much before this is the existing video game regulatory board that Saudi Arabia has, because one of the companies they're investing in is Take-Two, which obviously owns Grand Theft Auto. So it's just kind of like hilarious that this like completely counterculture thing that started as like the most rebellious, dangerous game of all time, super westernized, making fun of America and everything else, is now like, there's stake in the game from Saudi Arabia to be like, hey, you guys should check out Grand Theft Auto because we're sort of like, it's part of our identity now, and we want to be seen to be like, hey, we're open to these games now.
Well, this is the thing. Like, whether or not people in Saudi Arabia will actually ever play these games is another matter entirely. But it's not about that. You know what I mean? It's not about promoting these studios and these games in Saudi Arabia. It's about using these games to promote the country itself. So it's, again, that's where the whole argument comes down. How much benefit does this actually have to anybody? Is it worth ignoring the problems with the regime for the plus points of it? It's genuinely, you could go round and round in circles with this for hours and hours and hours. And indeed people do, and indeed I have been one of them.
Well, I mean, we'll do follow-up stuff if more things develop. At the minute, it's very much just a lot of write-ups just saying this transaction thing has happened, and we'll sort of predict stuff from then on out. So let us know what you think down in the comments below of the transaction itself. How do you see the future of Take-Two, Blizzard, and EA? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
And I'm not on this news, but I don't know what
else is going to come after that?
And I've been Adam.
Yeah.
Yes, he has. I don't know what you want me to say.
Anything at all. Bye.
Bye.